thegearnetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
Hey, this is April Hunter, and you are listening to the All Bets Are Off podcast with Robbie Vega.
What's up, rock soldiers? This is the rockstar Robbie Vegas bringing you another brand new, fresh episode of the All Bets Are Off podcast. Today, my guest is JC Money. JC is not only the president of the Gear Network, he's been on the All Bets Are Off podcast multiple times before, but today is a little bit different. We're going to be talking about his comeback in the world of professional wrestling. So I'm not going to waste any time. I'm not going to bullshit you guys around. I just want you to follow ABAO Pod across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Myself and JC would be very grateful for that. Now let's get this interview rolling. So JC, man, nice to have you back. It's been a while, probably since last December.
Yeah. Thank you. Nice to be back. I like being the once a year or once every 2 year treat. I have no idea, but
how many times have you been on? It's got to be 2, 3.
This is my second. No. I'm sorry, third. This will be my third because I did the Christmas one with you and Chaz last year.
Right. That's right. So it was December.
Yes, indeed. Seems to be it's my time of year, my friend.
I know, we're always vibing on that.
Hell yeah! I get the countdown. Although this year I took a strategically different approach because typically I would begin my Christmas countdown in like September because I didn't give a crap about Halloween or anything. But then last year kind of restored my faith and my love in Halloween. So now I will begin my Christmas countdowns November 1st because Thanksgiving's whatever. But yeah, absolutely. December is when we usually vibe and we connect around Christmas time. That's me, right. And Steve Cruz.
I was just going to say, so as far as Steve Cruz goes, the countdown starts in January, but for everybody else, November.
The countdown for Steve Cruz starts December 26th.
And he loves it. I don't care what he says.
Yeah, if he tells you he doesn't love it, he's lying. I will introduce you. I will introduce you to the world's biggest liar, and his name will be Steve Cruz if he tells you he doesn't love the constant Christmas trolling. We
should get, all of my listeners and your listeners to make sure that they remind him when Christmas is all year long.
That's funny. I miss him. The last time I saw him was he paid a visit. I think in the shoot job was brought him here to Rochester for something, and then he met up with Mike Champion, Colonel Kayfabe, and Champ shot a message to me. It was like, Cruz is in town. Let's go meet up for a beer. So we met at UPW, and then he took the tour there, and then we went right around the hall to Dave & Buster's and had a couple of Pepsis and acted like that was the first time I had seen Steve Cruz in almost 10 years, like in person.
Oh, wow.
But you would never have been able to tell because you're obviously, this, Robbie, being a wrestler yourself. It's just, it's one of those things. It's one of those unwritten rules of being a wrestler where you can go not physically seeing somebody for so long. And but you have that, that relationship, you have that bond, that common bond with wrestling. And then, you maintain the text relationship or the Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And then, you see that person. And it's like you just saw them a day ago,
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And well, that's a pretty good segue for what we're going to be talking about here because we want to talk about your comeback to the world of professional wrestling.
Yes. It's, I think the very first time I was on this podcast, I was only dabbing with the idea, but a lot has happened since then.
Yeah. And that was probably about a year and a half ago at this point, right?
Yes. It was actually, sadly, just after Brody Lee died.
That's right. So, let's kind of pick up where we left off then, and let's talk about this because you were just kind of touching on it here and there, saying it was something you were considering. And, where did that final push come from?
So the final push actually came from Chip Stetson.
Really?
After Brody Lee, yeah, absolutely. After Brody Lee had passed away, that was kind of my proverbial come to Jesus moment, if you will. And where I sat there and I began to look at the big picture and look at things and really started kind of viewing my time as being, could be limited. You know what I mean? Brody Lee was only a year older than I was. And he and I have been friends for, his entire career. And to have someone that close in age that that well just kind of go like that, it's like I think what really took it into overdrive for me was the heavy amount of people that I knew weren't in good standing with him, reaching out to me, asking me if, did he really not like me? Did he really think this of me, this, that, and whatever? And I don't know. I think it was just at that point where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be that guy. Like, if my number is called tomorrow, everyone's going to know where I stand with them. And I started going through and evaluating different things, different periods of my life, the wrestling period of my life, the professional, work, shoot job period of my life, the personal period of my life, my own self, and what I thought of myself at that point in time. And I really just big pictured everything. And so I had, by the time I appeared on this podcast the first time, I had reached out to Hellcat just to, bridge that gap. We had a very, very long history of heat that we don't even need to go into because neither of us remember it at this point. Yeah. And it's an incredible moot point by this point now, 2 years later. But I reached out to him to simply thank him for providing the platform that helped kind of establish my identity because, had he not done that, I may not have, gone to the levels that I went to, whether or not it was, optically in professional wrestling or elsewhere without that platform being done. And I wanted to make sure he knew that coming from me, God forbid, in case anything ever happened to me, I didn't want that what if. And he responded in kind. And then a few months later, Chip reached out to me and was like, hey, my boy is wrestling at FCWA taping in their old building that they had. It was literally like a minute and a half from where I currently live now. Yeah. So I was like, are you sure? Like, can I go there? Like, will I be welcome? Will I be looked at? And then he's like, no, brother, I want you there. You're my guest. Don't worry about it. Come. And then the first person I see, literally, soon as I pull in, first person I see is Hellcat. And I just said, and I looked at him and I knuckle bumped him. And I was like, it's good to see you. You ready to break the internet? And he goes, hell yeah. And we took a selfie and posted that selfie and broke the internet. And since that point, UPW's been a home.
Now, if I remember correctly, I was there that day.
I don't know. I think you must have been. Because I know I saw a lot. I knew I saw a lot of people there. It was I know Shane was wrestling Matic, but a lot of my time was spent backstage reacclimating myself and getting and beginning to get to know everybody that was there. The new roster that had maybe heard of who JC Money was, but never actually met me.
So I got to ask you then. So from that day, is that like in your head? Are you like, okay, I'm going to start hitting the gym hard. I'm going to start prepping for my comeback, or what happens there that keeps this train rolling?
Well, so when the pandemic hit, I actually had a home gym built where I live. So I didn't want to go back to the gym environment. I just with having a membership at a gym, it's very easy to go and get in a pattern. And if you're in a pattern, that's great. But then you get that damn snowstorm that hits. And them roads are nasty or whatever, or you're just not feeling it. You don't go. It's very, very easy when you have a gym membership to not go to the gym.
Yeah, right? That's true. Yeah.
I got great gym quality stuff that I was able to acquire, and I built a gym in my house. So I have no excuse. So I had been doing that for a while, and I had been getting into the regiment of working out regularly first 3 times a week, then it was 4 times a week, and then on top of my intermittent fasting and my yoga, I was in really, really good shape. And I think what had happened at that point, the idea came to my head that I needed to see at that time, 40 years old, could I still do it? I hadn't done it in, I think at that point, 3 years, and I was really out of shape the 3 years beforehand. So I can't remember what it was. It was like a post on Facebook or something. And I want to say Loke posted it. And it was in relation to cage matches. And I had thrown out there in response, I've never done one. I really think I can do one. And Loke replied and was like, I think you can. And I think you'd kill it if you did. And so I replied and I was like, well, I think there's only one person that could probably make that happen. And then I wrote, right, Hellcat, and I tagged Hellcat. Thinking just being me as a kind of a knucklehead or whatever. I didn't think he was actually serious, right? Because he responded, and kind of with like a thumbs up, a reaction, and I just thought it was just him acknowledging me being a knucklehead. And then a couple of weeks later, this would be June of 21, I believe. They're getting ready to announce UPW Business as Usual, which was September of 2021 at Pineapple Jack's. They were getting ready to do that. It was going to be the first show post-pandemic. First show, right?
Yep.
All of a sudden, I get a message that says, "Hope you're lifting them weights. You got you set for the show in the cage match." And I was like, "Really? Oh, okay, cool." Like, I'm like, "Great, this is fantastic." And I'm thinking, okay, so maybe I'm wrestling one of their students or whatever. He's like, against Cameron. And I was like, to me, I was like blown away, because here I am, like, I've known Cameron for longer than literally everybody in this in the wrestling world has known, except for maybe Tiger. And I was like, so, I got to come back to the place where its origins stemmed from the New Millennium Wrestling days. I got to come back essentially home after 17 years of not wrestling for them. Yeah. I'm wrestling against a very, very, very good friend of mine, which means I know I'm going to be taken care of in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And this friend happens to be the gatekeeper of this organization and a Hall of Famer.
Right.
No pressure, right? So then you take that, and then on July 3rd of 2021, it's the first match announced for the show. 2 or 3 months before the show actually happens, me versus Cameron in the cage is the first match announced.
That's
you
awesome.
talk about prep. I mean, I was to the moon, right? I was like, oh my God, like, and that should really serve as a lesson to people, I think.
Mm-hmm.
is it's never too late, but you can't be afraid to own up to, as stubborn as one person might be, and I'm as stubborn as they come. Ask anybody that knows who I am, right? The minute you can actually look at yourself in the mirror and genuinely say, I'm gonna, not to take lyrics from a song from Michael Jackson called "Man in the Mirror," but if you can actually look in the mirror and say, I'm gonna make a change, and it starts with me, and you actually do that, you'll be very, very surprised at just how organically everything manifests in a very good way. And that's how I felt. So yeah, it was that's kind of how that all happened.
And, after that match happened, it wasn't just a one and done for you. You're back. You felt good. You realized that you could still go, and you stuck around. So I want to know, what have you noticed since you've been back that's the biggest difference from the last time that you were heavily involved in the business?
Yeah. So 2 parts to that. To touch up on the part where it was originally I was one and done. Yeah. Like, I just wanted to come. I just wanted to do it. And I wanted my kids to see me wrestle. They were in the front row. They were sitting with Chip's wife, and, whom I love very dearly. I love Chip Stetson and their family so incredibly much. Anybody that wants to double check on that, check the latest episode. Well, not the latest episode, but one of the episodes of JC Money Show where Chip, the most recent one that I had Chip on, gets very deep towards the end. And I think that paints the picture of why. But I was one and done. And then they ended up moving to the place that they're currently in now. And I had after that, I had come back. I'd been, watching some practices and kind of hanging back. And, the invite was there. So it was more, I think, me like, can I do it? Do I want to do it? Can I make room for it? Is it logical to do that? This will tie into the second part of that question. What did it for me was the culture. The culture nowadays is so incredibly different and positive. These folks that were there, no matter what their age was, what their experience level was, or anything like that, just kind of craved that knowledge and wanted to learn. And specifically whom seemed to gravitated towards me was, and I also in kind gravitated towards them, was greed. They were very, especially Pure Gold, was like, I hope I could get the chance to work you and this. And I'm just like, dude, I'm just some fucking nobody that talks on a microphone that you saw wrestle in one match. And they're like, no, I heard, I know who you are. And it just, everybody was just so like good to one another. Like it wasn't a culture like it was 15 years ago where you're going backstage and everybody's playing grab ass with one another and doing dumb shit and being stupid, like professional, It was professional. And that was like, I sat there and I looked and I'm like, wow, this is a good place. This is a good spot to be. And I want to help any way I can. And, knowing going in there at 40, 41 years old at the time, I'm like, I'm not going for that big contract. I'm not using this as a launch platform to live the dream, brother, and get away from the house or do any of those types of things and hope for that one big deal. Like I pretty much conceded that I don't think I'm going to get that big deal for AEW or WWE or anything like that. I've pretty much conceded that. But in the same, I looked at this as an opportunity to kind of rewrite my ending, my personal ending, and what at the end of the day, I want that story to tell. And that's really why I came back. I wanted to work with these kids. I wanted to help them. I wrestle a completely different style than most people nowadays do. A lot of people do the Spot Fest stuff, which is good. And I enjoy watching it from time to time, but it can't be every match. I tend to incorporate elements of the old school, the late 70s, early to mid 80s kind of wrestling. I do that with the entertainment stuff. Yes. And that is a dynamic that it's not as common now as it may have been 30 years ago, but that's the style I wrestle. Could I wrestle the style like, the hard hitting Japanese wrestling style? Of course I can, but I don't need to. So bringing that element in and showing them a different way of thinking, a different way of doing things, incorporating a lot more of the psychology, that was kind of what I was hoping to do. And in turn, just the response that I've gotten from the people that I've worked with, UPW themselves and their crowd, like they've really accepted me. And it's honestly, it's arguably been the most fun I've had. And I'm getting ready to celebrate my 23-year WrestleVersary in February. And I'm having the most fun that I'm having, right now in the present.
Mm-hmm. Well, you touched on, the culture and the people that are involved right now. So in your opinion, since you've been back, who are some people that you personally are like, hey, you got to watch out for this guy. He's really going to be something.
Oh boy. Putting me on the spot there. Who's gonna really be now, mind you, I say this with all due respect to everybody else that's out there. Yeah. I'm only working for UPW right now. Yeah. I have not gone out to Immortal. I haven't gone out to ESW or branched out to any other places yet. It's kind of on the trajectory for 2023, but for me, my sole focus has been on Rochester and UPW. So I'm speaking specifically to that organization and what I've been able to see from there. Anybody, the folks that have passed through there, I like Loke's kids, Saren Rain and TJ. Those guys are just unbelievably fantastic people, not just wrestlers, but people. Yep. They're really good people. American Strong Style they are my absolute favorites. And I'm not saying this because that's who I predominantly worked with all of 2022 before my injury, but I genuinely love them. Again, such good people and not just good wrestlers and students of the game. but genuinely good human beings.
Yeah.
And
100%.
and so and Greed, I am very, very high on Greed. They give me old school Underworld Cartel vibes. I
Yeah.
think that all of the members of Greed can really, really, really be something special. They, you know, I think Lotto and Budget could really. There's something about them that I'm genuinely like. I look at and I'm like, I see kind of like almost like Warlord and Barbarian vibes with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they can be that dominant tag team kind of thing. You know,
For sure.
and they're very young still, so they'll get there. But they absorb the knowledge, they take the feedback, they crave it. Same with Diamante and Pure Gold. They crave the feedback. They want the feedback. They want to do these things. They want to be the best that they can be. And if I have even just a tiny beard hair, of being. Of helping any one of them or all of them in some way, shape, or form, and they reach the next level, I will be beaming with pride.
Those guys specifically, especially Price, not to, negate anybody else, but I can't even believe how much they want to know everything and be involved with everyone. This past weekend, like Lotto and Price both came down to the Delirious seminar at the Buffalo Wrestling Academy. The next day, Price was, he was at BCW and he did get a match, and like these guys will just go wherever they need to go, and they're like, I'm here, use me if you want, but if not, they sit out in the crowd and they watch everyone. I can't even explain how much I like that.
It's fantastic. And you know what, it's a great testament to really wanting it. And I feel like myself, I'm doing this myself specifically with UPW again, just kind of zoned in just on one spot right now.
Yeah.
But I suffered an injury in June, and I missed a show, but like the last 3 shows that were, going on there or whatever, I had been in attendance. I went and I hung at the show and watched the show, the one that Chip became the champion. And then I was the MC for 2 other ones. Yeah. So they couldn't use me as a referee. They were using me as a ring announcer and kind of like the MC. And dude, I had just as much fun doing that as I do performing in the ring. So I may have a future. So I may have to reevaluate what my post in ring career will be, because I'm not sure if it'll be specifically just production, and maybe I might weasel my way into emceeing and ring announcing there.
Yeah.
But I've got to expand a lot and absorb a lot of different elements of wrestling, in this comeback. That's not just limited to in-ring stuff too. And that's just been incredibly rewarding.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because my next question was going to be about the injury and all that. Anyways, so you get injured in June, but this time it's different because you already know that you want to make that comeback. And I saw that you've even been posting like, who should I face when I come back? So obviously your mind is still in, I'm not done here, but why don't you walk us through like the, what actually happened and, what you're envisioning for yourself when you come back?
So I want to say to anybody that's listening, if your body's telling you something's up, don't wait like I did. Listen to your body, get that shit right. So my right ankle has been my quote unquote bum ankle since about 2017. And I never did anything about it. I never did anything to get it looked at. I just kind of worked with it, and just kind of moved on with my life. Right. And certainly wrestling again has not necessarily helped with the impact and you talk about all these people that say wrestling is fake. They don't factor in every minute little variable involved with pro wrestling. You're talking about competing on a ring that's on a mat that's, not very thick, but still, with any, certain rings may have lumps in some areas. Certain rings may be a little worn in some areas versus others. You factor where you're stepping in. It's kind of like stepping into a backyard that's kind of uneven and maybe has some divots every now and then. You don't it's not picture perfect. Like it's not taking care of your ankles. It's not like a Dr. Scholl's insole kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So keeping that in mind, I was already going in there with a very bad ankle that I should have had looked at years before. Never did. Just was focusing on my conditioning, my body, bulking up just a little bit, but not too much, so I can kind of remain light and limber and everything. And that seemed to be doing okay. But every now and then my right ankle would go out on me and I would limp, or I would have to sit down, or, and I wasn't really sharing this with anybody. I wasn't really doing it. I was making joke about having a bum ankle to people that would listen, but I never really did anything about it. So about a week and a half before my last match that I've had, and it was me and Chip Stetson against American Strong Style for the UPW tag team belts. A week and a half before then, it started acting really bad. Like it was going out more than it should have.
Uh-huh.
And I tried, it was swelling a little bit, and, so ice and this and, ibuprofen and whatever, and stretching and everything I could possibly do, because I didn't want to, take the show off.
Yeah.
But I probably, in hindsight, should have probably sat that show, because I'd probably be wrestling now, but I didn't. Wow. I said I was going to go get it looked at. I think I said I was going to get it looked at the end of the year.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why, but so it was going out. It was bad. It was hurting really bad the weekend of. And then we get to the show, and Chip comes to me and he's like, "Brother, my bum knee is messing with me today." And I was like, "Your knee, my ankle. This ought to be fun." So I do my stretches. I do everything. Everything, is okay. I'm walking a little slower. I'm not running as hard as I was, but I was making do.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen this match back, so I don't really know how it looked, but I know there was a spot where I was on the top rope, like I was going to get superplexed. Troy Cooper was going to go for the superplex. I blocked it. I, give him a couple shots, headbutt or whatever, push him off. As I push him off, he does that little angle twist to kind of get into the perfect position for my top rope elbow.
Yeah.
So he gets into position. I jump off the top, hit the top rope elbow like normal, pop up, go to turn. And as I make that pivot, down I go.
Oh, wow.
And I could not I'm not bullshitting you. I couldn't put any weight on it.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't feel anything. I just knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And so I, kind of crawl over, I cover 1, 2, and I'm like, trying to shake it off or whatever. And as I get up to go do the spot, I realize, and I put weight on my foot, and I'm like, oh, I thought I broke it, dude. Seriously. I thought it was broken.
Really?
That's how much it hurt. That's how, and ultimately that's how big the ankle was. It was like 2-3 times its size, when we got the boot off, but we finished the match, and I was just so numb, and very stupidly, I didn't accept any help to the back, because, right, you're the tough man, brother. You got to walk it off on your own.
Yeah, right.
All I knew is that when it was done, I was seeing red, but I was seeing red at myself, because I kind of felt like something was going to happen. I just didn't actually expect it to. And
I know what
yeah. So when I, compared to 20 years ago, if I got injured, I didn't really care, because there weren't so many other things in my personal life that I kind of hinged on my mobility or anything that, I needed to do. So immediately I'm thinking, how do I explain this to my kids? How do I explain this to my off wrestling career? What does this do for my summer? Just so many things, Robbie, were going through my head, that when it was some ref tried to help me out, and I don't even remember who it was. I know I was seeing red. I know they were trying. And I know I looked at him and I said, get the fuck away from me before I knock you out or something like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay. And he walked right back in. And
Wow.
I guess production was like, get out there and help him. He's like, he just yelled at me. He told me to leave him alone. And I'm like, when I learned this, I felt horrible. But then, so after that happened, I had to get help to my car. I did drive home. I did make it home.
Okay.
My girlfriend bought crutches for me, though. Couldn't really get out of my car. Couldn't put any weight on it. I was in just an excruciating amount of pain. And she was like, I think you need to go to the emergency room. I said, fuck that, because my kids are coming. So I need to prepare them for what's happening and what's to come.
Yeah.
So they get to my house and I tell them, I hurt myself. My oldest daughter already knew my ankle was terrible. My youngest daughter didn't quite compute with her at first.
Mm-hmm.
But I told them what was happening, and I said, I don't know if it's broken. I don't know what the deal is. I'm going to go get it looked at tomorrow.
Yeah.
Went and got it looked at, and they immediately ruled out a fracture, which was good.
Yeah.
But they said that there was concern about how long I had let this ankle go so bad that its attempt to heal was kind of thwarted by its misplacement, and as a result, the ligaments and everything underneath the ankle, the joints and all that stuff underneath there. I don't know the medical terminology, but that wasn't able to heal properly, and that's what was causing the pain, and that's what was causing the ankle to go out on me. And early synopsis is I got sent over to have an MRI done.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, oh shit, this is serious.
Yeah.
So
right.
it killed my whole damn summer because I couldn't do anything. I was in a walking boot all July.
Yikes.
I had an MRI done towards the end of July. It was almost a month after the injury occurred because that was the earliest that they could fit me in. So I'm in a walking boot all of July. Can't do anything. Still doing things where I could, but I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Couldn't drive without pain. Couldn't walk. Couldn't cut my lawn. Like things that we all take for granted.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And
so then I get the MRI done. I meet with the specialist. They tell me basically it looks like you're going to need to get surgery on this thing. So they recommend me to an orthopedic surgeon. Meanwhile, as this is all going on, because everything is so spaced out because of, this post-pandemic volumes, I guess, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I was just like, I can't sit here and just let it hang. I got to do something. So every day I was in my pool, I was doing underwater aquatics to kind of move it around and do what I can and let it just kind of float weightless.
Yeah.
I saw my normal chiropractor. He also specializes in acupuncture and laser therapy. So I had him just do that. I said, what's the worst that can happen? I said, if I got to get surgery, what the hell,
Yeah,
might as well, right?
Yeah, you're not going to make it any worse.
Right. That was kind of my train of thought. So I was doing all of these things. I was having the laser therapy. I was getting the acupuncture done. We were working on movements a little bit, and then I would go in my pool. Thankfully, the summer was so hot that grass wasn't growing. I didn't need to cut the lawn at all, and it justified every day being in the pool.
Yeah, right.
But I was able to really do a lot of up and down movements, not so much left and right because that was really when the pain was, but up and down. I was able to at least do these kinds of things. I was able to walk around the pool and just kind of let it float there. And ultimately that ended up helping.
Okay.
So when I ended up getting to, I know I'm being very long-winded here.
I'd prefer the long stories, trust me.
Okay, good. So when I get to the orthopedic surgeon, I'm figuring I'm going in, I'm going to get a date for the surgery, and then I'm going to be good. So my timeline now is had been moved. I thought I would be good by September. Turned out it was worse than it was. That got moved to, I figured December.
Yeah.
And then he was like, they took an X-ray. Now we're like, I think maybe early October, I think at this point.
Yeah.
So they take another X-ray and he tells me, he says to me, he's like, what have you been doing since you had your MRI? I told him everything I just listed here.
Yeah.
And he was like, when I compare the two side by side, and he shows the MRI versus the X-ray that he took that day in early October, he goes, you've kind of been doing your own physical therapy. I'm going to recommend you to actual physical therapy though. And I want to see you in 6 weeks and see where you are. Okay. Wow. That's way better than the surgery option. So now I'm thinking, okay, so 6 weeks, it takes me to November. I haven't wrestled or anything like that. So my timeline becomes February.
Right.
Where I'm thinking by February 23, I'll be ready to at least start easing my way back into everything with the goal of ultimately wrestling by no later than April or May.
Yeah. Right.
And, go ahead.
I was going to say, so now are you still doing physical therapy, or did it help to the point where you're no longer doing it?
It helped, and to the point where I'm very proud to admit, I know that, we're now, based on my normal understanding of your schedule for the podcast, we're airing this on December 11th.
Yes.
Hopefully the Jets beat the Bills, but anyways, they just lost to the Vikings. I'm salty about it. But as of press recording, it's December 4th. I had my last physical therapy appointment it was Wednesday, November 30th. No,
wow.
I lied. Thursday, December 1st. I'm sorry. So Thursday, December 1st, I had my most recent physical therapy appointment. And it was my 6th or 7th one. And Robbie, I bullshit you not, I was religiously listening to the physical therapist, and I was and I did all the exercises and I did everything. And then they printed out, they were kind enough to print out to me the different exercises, things that I could do so I could do these at home. And every single day I was doing these exercises. I was working this ankle out. Starting small, then graduating to the resistance bands, then getting into the different, heel raises and up and down the steps and all those things. And so finally I got to the point where my first physical therapy appointment, when they took my measurements, I couldn't lift my foot up more than 7 degrees. Normal is a range between 19 and 22 is where they want to see.
Gotcha.
I was only able to lift my foot up 7 degrees.
Wow.
By this past Tuesday, I was up to 19.5.
Oh, wow.
And so midway through, I went and I saw the orthopedic guy again. And he was like, yeah, what you're doing is good. Take maybe about 3 to 6 more physical therapy sessions. And you've pretty much avoided surgery, dude. And I'm holy shit, this is great. So I ramped it up and I was doing it. We had, this last one, we had pivot drills, which was, of course, what kind of took me down. Was I took a wrong pivot, and that was the be all end all there last June. I do some of these pivot drills that you see football players doing.
Yeah.
And I'm doing them. And landing on doing impact drills and landing. And physical therapist was like, I think you're good to go. And I'm like, good to go, as in I don't know, next week I could wrestle? She's like, no. She's like, no, you want to ease your way back into it. She goes, but you definitely should be able to hit your February trajectory, if not January. And I was like, all I needed to know, I knuckle bumped her. I got my release. I was good to go.
That's fantastic.
So I was the weight that was lifted off my shoulder just was amazing. It's been a rough 6 months. There have been some setbacks throughout that too, with progression where I feel I should have been versus where I was, and that was kind of deflating. But
sure.
overall, I had a pretty good team. I had a very good support system, and UPW kept me involved. They didn't have to. They could have let me sit on my ass.
Right.
But they kept me involved, and that kept me, and by doing that introduced me to some of the other, to ring announcing. I would have never thought to be a ring announcer or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Dude, I have had so much fun doing that. It's really cool. And just, after every show, I go to the Hellcat, go to Mrs. Hellcat, looking for feedback and, thanking them for the inclusion, because they didn't have to include me at all. And they did. And that's not lost on me. So through this injury, kind of goes back to the big picture thing from earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Through this injury, you can really do one of two things. You can sit and sulk, or you can make the most out of what you're given. And I did. And I was pretty freaking grateful for that, because it could have been very easy to be like, okay, well, he's on the shelf and leave him alone. We'll go somewhere else. Or no, they thought of me, and that's not lost on me.
Well, I'll tell you, and I'm sure that kept your drive to come back and kept you wanting to come back. So I've noticed, like I said, there was a post about, who should you face? So I'm going to put you on the spot again. Who do you want to face? Who are some guys that off the top of your head that you're like, I at least want to do X, Y, and Z?
Well, it goes without saying you and I need to at least have one.
At least.
So whether it's, UPW or FCWA tapings, or I go down to the Buffalo Wrestling Academy and become a bump monkey there during a training session, or BCW or wherever, we'll figure it out. I've got a limited amount of punches left on the punch card, but I'm not there yet. So,
right.
We'll work to make that happen. The JC Money and Greed tie-ins, that's a story that seems to have written itself. So there's just too much closeness, I think, to the history of my character and that group. So I've already wrestled 3 out of the 4 members. I wrestled Pure Gold at an FCWA taping, and I wrestled Lotto and Budget. I was teaming with Loke. It was in the UPW tag title tournament.
Yeah.
And I wrestled Lotto and Budget there. I haven't wrestled Diamante yet, but so he's one. I'd like to get in the ring with Pure Gold though, again, because I think he and I can do some really good stuff. And then, really, there's got to be at least one more match with Chip and I. We got to at least have that. And I don't know. I honestly, Robbie, I'll work with anybody. I'm in the giving back stage of my wrestling journey. So, give me anybody and I'll do something with them. And in my thought process is if we can't make something happen, then, maybe I'm not the guy for the job anymore. And so far I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like I've still got a lot more left. Mm-hmm. So, give me anybody, really. I'm there. I'm having fun. That's the most important thing. I'm having fun. I don't take myself too seriously anymore. And it's much better that way.
Let me ask you this then. So do you have any kind of goals, accomplishments, bucket list, anything like that that's not related to a specific person that you'd like to work with, but just anything you'd like to accomplish before you do decide that you're hanging it up?
You talking about in ring?
Yep.
I'd like to win I'd like to win a singles championship, at least one more. It's been 10 years since I've had one. Maybe even longer now that I think about it. I think I'd like to win a singles championship. I'd like ideally the UPW heavyweight championship. That's something that, I jokingly and affectionately refer to as my wrestle birthright. I'm sure there's a litany of people that hear that and gonna be like, oh yeah, no, the fuck it's not. But either
Yeah,
way,
right.
whatever. Fuck you, it's my gimmick. That would obviously be the, I think, perfect exclamation point to the Mr. Rochester story. But certainly, any title that I don't have to create for myself, being even in transition, even if I'm that guy that, you're not going to build your company around me, but WWE didn't build their company around Shawn Michaels either, and in his old man run. But if they needed a transition to get someone over, they transitioned something to Shawn Michaels. I don't necessarily need a championship anymore. I just need something meaningful. I need to, I need to know that what I'm putting into my work is helping someone or something in the long run, particularly if it's somebody that I know that's going to be wrestling 5 years from now where I'm not going to be. If anything that I do in the ring helps them, and they take that with them in those 5 years and beyond, then I think I'll be really good there. But selfishly, for the character perspective, I wouldn't mind at least one more title run somewhere.
Well, I can definitely understand that. And I got to tell you, man, I love having you on because you're a great storyteller and you're always so well spoken. And I really enjoyed having you.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you. Are you cutting me off now? Is this done? Did I talk over my limit?
No, that was my final question. You can talk as much as you want. I just don't have any more.
Oh, great. No, that's totally cool. Yeah. It's just, it's really, it's far more rewarding now for me. And I understand now, being 42 years old myself, I understand why it's so hard to let go. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense. I understand now why it's so hard to let go, because when I had my little hiatus from wrestling and I was, contributing, but not really contributing. I was, interviewing wrestlers, giving people a platform or whatever, or I was giving up commentaries and things that I think that I could see that I could improve or whatever, but I was doing it from behind the scenes and everything like that. Yeah. I think part of that, and Chip helped me identify this too, was, I had baggage. I had, I'm losing my train of thought here when I'm saying this, and it's something so meager. Unfinished business. That's what it is. I had unfinished business that I needed to address before I could comfortably hang it up and say I was done. I knew I needed to, come back to UPW. I knew I needed to, make things right there, and I knew I needed to contribute something more. Yeah. And just to be
through.
Yeah. And it's now like, if the doctor would have told me you probably shouldn't wrestle again, you probably should hang it up, I'd be bummed.
Yeah.
Because I still feel like I have so much more to give in ring.
Yeah.
But I would have been okay because I would have known I would have known where I stood with the people that were most important to me in my earlier character development.
Yeah.
And now knowing that I do have the, do still have this chance to continue the comeback and write my own ending to my story. It's something that I think I took for granted a long time ago. And now I don't, because it's not always there. It's not always going to be there. You never know when your number is going to be called, whether it's athletically or, in physical form. Yes. So you got to make the most out of everything and take every opportunity that you can, and just honestly, dude, and enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And that's really where I am now. And it's honestly, it's better for me personally. And, I hope that it resonates with anybody that I come into contact with.
I was going to say it will, and it does, because the first time I shared a locker room with you was at IWF, however many years ago, in the Brockport area. And from then to seeing you at UPW now, there's like a huge difference in you. and you're having a really good time, and it always just looks like you're having fun no matter what, even like you said, doing the ring announcer and all that stuff. Because you were ring announcing the last, 2 matches that I had there, and you were having just as much fun as ever. And back at IWF, you were wrestling, and you're having just as much fun with the announcing now. And back then, I almost felt like you weren't having fun.
Well, I was more, so back then at IWF, that was when my life really began the turbulent tumble towards rock bottom. I was not in a very, very good place, and I was there to escape home, my home life at the time, which was going into the shambles. And then not only did it go into the shambles, but it went deep, deep into the shambles, right?
Yeah.
And from a personal perspective, there are some points during that time where I genuinely was so numb because of whatever I was drinking or taking or whatever.
Yeah.
I was genuinely so numb that a lot of times I wouldn't know, or I don't even know what I was putting out on the internet. I don't know what I was putting out. But I know what I was emitting, the energy that I was emitting was not a very good one. And a lot of people, and I give you credit for this too, because you saw through that. You saw through all of that and you stuck with me.
Yeah, I did.
But there was a lot of people that didn't stick with me, and a lot of people that I value and think very, very highly of did not stick with me during that time. They were done. They quit, and justifiably so. That time I was not in a very, very good place, and I'm comfortable now talking about it because I came out on that other side, and I had hit that rock bottom where literally everything was either desperately close to being taken from me or taken from me. I didn't have wrestling. I wasn't welcome. I was struggling with, my personal life, working absurd amounts of hours just to barely be broke. And it was I almost lost my house. Almost thought it was a lot. I haven't told people.
Yeah.
I went to hell in a handbasket and almost didn't come back. But I had a moment at one point where it was my kids, honestly, that I had thought about. I thought about them, and if I were to act on a feeling that I had, at that moment in time, what would that do for them?
Right.
And that was enough for me, who proudly wears his kids' names on his arms, to say, get your shit straight, fix what's broken, mend those fences, own up to your end of the bargain, and write your own fucking story.
And here you are.
And I and honestly, that was in maybe early 2019. I had that moment, and I put my head down and I got to work. And I just kept going, and I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept hustling, and I kept working, and things just started falling by the wayside. I was crawling up that mountain of hell. I was crawling, kicking, scratching, clawing, in some instances running, and I was doing all of that. And I finally get there, right? Get to where it happens. And now I'm at that mountaintop, and I'm looking down, and I'm like, holy shit, I freaking did it.
Yeah.
And then I look up and I see, okay, these are the people that I need to, fix things with. This is the industry I need to be back in. These are the members of my family I need to, make peace with. This is, just evaluating every single little thing that, or big thing, right? That mattered in and out of wrestling.
Right.
And I put my head down and I started getting to work on all of those things. And when you give yourself that chance. That's why every time I see these posts on Facebook from some people, you can tell who's looking for attention and who's really needing it.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and those that typically will post these motivational things and that are looking for attention, 3 months back, they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
The only way any one of them is going to make any sort of change, so that way they're not posting those statuses ever, is if they look in the mirror, just like I did, and say to yourself, make that change. It starts with you. And that's what I did. And, God dang it, Robbie, I feel like, I feel like I've come out of, just even the dumb things, 2 years ago, I'd make jokes about, Nickel City or, the Shindies or anything like that. Now I don't care, everybody do you. You know why? Because I'm doing me and I'm enjoying my life.
Right.
And that's the message, that needs to be said. It's just, you do you don't be afraid to put in the work. But when you put in that work and you accomplish everything you do, you doing you becomes a whole hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. I couldn't agree with that more.
I didn't mean to get all motivational and philosophical on you, but I mean, genuinely, it's really night and day.
Yeah. And I mean,
and I'm so appreciative of things now, everything. I'm appreciative of all of my friendships. I'm appreciative of my kids. I'm appreciative of my girlfriend, who is one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met in my life. I'm appreciative of wrestling, who's welcomed me back as if I never left. I'm appreciative of my shoot job, who's, paying me very nicely and being and allowing me to be, me. And I'm just appreciative of so much. And, if I were to go back to myself in 2018 or 2017, when you saw me at that IWF locker room and I'm staring, hell in the face, if I could go back there, I would look at that version of John Cimino or JC Money and say, dude, it's going to be all right. Keep your head up. And maybe he would have got there a lot sooner.
I mean, we all wish that when we're all going through those things, but
for real.
They make us who we are. And, there's a reason why me and you are sitting here doing this today. And, it's not sorry for taking it deep or making it philosophical, because people need to hear these things. This is real life.
I want people to hear that thing because, the name JC Money, as much as I try to abandon the name, it's kind of like Hellcat with the name Hellcat. Hellcat couldn't change his gimmick if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Because everybody's always going to call him Hellcat. He's been Hellcat for far too long. Same with Chip Stetson.
Yeah.
Same with HC Loke. I've been JC Money for 23 years. I can't change it if I wanted to. But what I can do, and Shawn Michaels is the example to use here. Shawn Michaels in the 90s, you know those stories with him.
Oh yeah.
He is talented. He had a great mind for wrestling, but was just a gigantic knucklehead that wouldn't shut his mouth, and either got his ass kicked or got it close to kicked or whatever, and and then he had his moment, and he came back and rewrote his ending.
Yes, and
everybody's like, we love the guy. Like, the guy's amazing. And now look at what he's doing now. I mean, helping run the company that he was almost kicked out of, for good, kind of thing. So that's kind of a lot of where I've, old man version of me kind of looks to, is that story.
Yeah.
Not necessarily from the religion aspect, but from the aspect of what, what one can do for themselves. And the energy that you can change your energy, and what you feel is what you emit, and if what you emit is great, great things come. And this, I wouldn't have believed this if you would have told me this story about me 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah,
but I'm telling this now, and I will tell it till I'm blue in the face, because maybe there's someone out there that, feels like I felt, or went through what I felt, or went through what I went through, or is going through their own version of that. And maybe if this just helps that one person say, you know what the fuck, man, I'm listening to this All Bets Are Off podcast with this dude I've never heard of that told this story about his journey. And you know what? That could be me.
Yeah.
I'd be doing a disservice if I withheld that, withheld the info.
Totally agree. 100%. I mean, that's a lot of the reason why a lot of us end up where we end up is we feel inspired from somebody else's story. So it can go in any direction with any part of our lives. So I agree with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just again, kudos to just you for, riding with me and hanging with me, even throughout the turbulence, even, as much as I didn't volunteer to you about my personal situation, you never judged me. You never, thought ill of me. And that goes a very long way with me. So, not that I think you needed that validation or needed to hear that, but I'm in the business of presenting people their flowers while they're still alive to receive them. So, just so your friendship, not beyond the weekly communications and your podcast being on my network, that means a lot to me. So I want you yourself to know that and understand that. And that's why when I announce you, I make sure to give you the most, the deepest, like Robbie Vegas kind of, emphasis on your name. And that, except when you and I inevitably meet in the ring, I may even do that as I'm jumping off the top rope to drop the elbow on you. I'll jump off the top and go, Robbie Vegas, and drop the elbow or something. I don't know. I'll get you to break character somehow.
Yeah, right. I love it, man. And honestly, I appreciate it very much. And, I got your back. I had your back then. I got your back now.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you again for being here, man. I always love when you're on, and I'm sure this isn't going to be the last one.
No, not at all. We'll have to have another one, but either before or after the match. Or
yes.
Maybe we could do something funny. We could record the session before the match and then actually have the match and then record an add-on session after the match and then release
that'd be great.
It.
Yes.
It'd be hilarious. I don't know. That'd be hilarious. I have no idea.
I like that.
But hey, how about this? How about you, Mr. Symphonic voice that just gives me all the vibes and all the feels that I hug myself when I listen to Robbie Vegas on Apple Music in my car, who's releasing a new album very soon. I believe January 3rd, right?
1st.
For January 1st.
Yep, January 1st.
January 1st. So you're going for New Year's, that ball drop, that shit's going to hit my Apple Music because I subscribe.
Exactly.
How about you come on my podcast and we'll, just like we did with the first one, let's talk about the second album on my podcast.
Right, let's do it.
Not today though, because I've in reflecting on my journey from last appearance to this one, I have earned myself a celebratory White Russian. So I'm going to have a few of those.
All right, man. Sounds good to me. Let's work it out. And I look forward to that.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. And all you listeners, remember, hit that subscribe button on this feed. If you have not hit the subscribe button, you're doing yourself a disservice. When you hit that subscribe button, it doesn't matter if Robbie posts anything about the podcast or I post anything about the podcast or Gear Network posts anything about the podcast. Wherever you're listening on your podcast, if you just gently tap that subscribe button and subscribe, no matter what, when a new episode is released, you get alerted. So do that.
Right. That's right. And I mean, we know that we get very busy being, in the music and wrestling business. So sometimes my post might come late. Maybe you don't want to wait for my post.
Yeah, mine too. And sometimes with technology, like I typically time delay posts, breaking down the Gear Network wall here. I'll typically time delay posts. So that way they hit the feed as soon as the podcast is launched. But sometimes technology fails. Those posts don't go through. So please subscribe because that'll eliminate that problem.
Right. Awesome. Well, thanks again, man.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. All right, rockers, one more time. JC Money for his third time on the All Bets Are Off podcast, but not the last time. So I thank you guys for joining us right here on the Gear Network. See how I plugged that in there for you, JC? And we will catch you guys next week.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.